I never thought a morning could feel heavy until I saw Lila standing by the schoolyard fence, her hair catching the sunlight like it always did, but somehow different. "Hey," I said, forcing my voice casual, though my stomach nodded. She turned, and that smile, the one I could never tell her I loved, made my chest ache. "Hey," she replied, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. There was a pause, one of those awkward silences that somehow spoke louder than words. "You're quiet today," she said, tilting her head. I laughed softly, though it came out more like a groan. "Just thinking." She raised an eyebrow. "About what?" I hesitated. How could I tell her I was thinking about how I'd never said the words I'd carried for years? Instead I shrugged. "Nothing important." She stepped closer, nudging my shoulder lightly. "You've been acting weird lately." Did I do something? My heart skipped. Did she notice? I forced a smile. "No, it's nothing. Really." She studied me for a moment, then nodded, accepting the lie or maybe choosing not to challenge it. "School feels boring today, huh?" she said, changing the topic. "Boring's one word for it," I replied, and we both laughed, but I noticed the subtle tension in her expression, the way her eyes flicked away from mine. There was something in her, something I couldn't name, that made me uneasy. We walked toward class together, our shoulders almost brushing, and I fought the urge to reach for her hand. I told myself it wasn't the time, that someday I'd have the courage. "Remember that time we stayed out by the lake until dark?" she said suddenly, smiling at the memory. "I thought we'd get caught." I grinned. "Yeah, you were scared, hiding behind that tree like a kid." "I was scared," she laughed. "But I also had fun. Being with you made it easier." I swallowed hard, my heart thudding. She didn't know how much those words mirrored my own feelings. As we rounded the corner toward the entrance, I heard her voice drop in a whisper behind a cluster of lockers. "I think he likes me," she said, and a laugh followed, a laugh not meant for me. My stomach lurched. I froze, trying to catch the rest, but it slipped into the chatter around her. My chest tightened. I knew she was talking about someone else, and the ache hit me sharper than I expected. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. I wanted to step forward, ask her who, tell her I had always loved her, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I nodded at her when she turned toward me, her expression innocent, unaware of the storm inside me. "Ready for class?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Yeah," she said, smiling again, the kind of smile that belonged to someone I had loved quietly for years. I followed her into the building, pretending everything was normal, while my heart broke just a little more with every step. I spotted Marco leaning against the lockers, his smirk like a knife twisting in my chest. "Hey man," I said, keeping my voice light, though every muscle in me wanted to lash out. He glanced up, that familiar arrogance in his eyes. "Hey, didn't expect to see you here," he replied. "What's up?" I forced a grin. "Nothing much. Just thought I'd check in." He raised an eyebrow, clearly sensing the tension I was hiding. "You sound different," he said. "Everything okay with you and Lila?" My stomach sank and my throat tightened. I couldn't let him know how much it hurt. "Yeah, everything's fine," I said, though the lie tasted bitter. Later, I saw Lila talking quietly with him near the cafeteria. My chest seized as I noticed the way she laughed, leaning into him as though I didn't exist. I remembered the times we'd shared secrets, the moments I could have told her I loved her but froze, paralyzed by fear. Every smile she gave him felt like a betrayal I had unknowingly allowed. I clenched my fists, my mind racing with regret. Why didn't I say anything? I muttered under my breath. I had my chance and I ruined it. I walked up to them, forcing calm into my steps. Lila glanced at me and I caught a flash of something unreadable in her eyes. Marco straightened, his smirk widening. "Hey, didn't expect to see you here," he said again, like our previous encounter had been meaningless. "Just wanted to say hi," I replied evenly. "So, how's school treating you?" The conversation felt absurd, but I had to maintain the facade. Good, Marco said. "Busy, but managing everything." I nodded, biting back the urge to snap. Every word from him felt like poison. Lila tilted her head, frowning slightly. "You seem different," she said. "Are you okay?" My heart thumped painfully. I wanted to tell her, scream it even, but I couldn't. Instead I said, "I'm fine. Just thinking about stuff." She studied me for a moment and nodded, misreading my coldness as disinterest. That misinterpretation hurt more than anything Marco could do. During lunch, I sat alone, replaying every moment I'd frozen in fear, every time I'd let my feelings go unspoken. I could almost hear my own voice from the past. "Say something. Just tell her." But I hadn't. I stared at the table, a pit of guilt and frustration growing inside me. My classmates chatted around me, but their voices were a blur. I felt isolated, like I had lost control of my life and my emotions. When Lila approached later, I forced a small smile. "Hey," she said softly. "Want to walk to class together?" I hesitated, my mind a storm. "Sure," I said finally, keeping my tone neutral. We walked side by side, her hand brushing mine, yet the warmth I should have felt was drowned by jealousy and regret. I realized then that I couldn't pretend anymore, not to her, not to myself. My heart was broken, my world unbalanced, and every choice I had avoided now demanded a reckoning. As we reached the classroom, I caught Marco's glance across the hall. He smirked, confident, unaware of the turmoil he had caused. I wanted to hate him, to yell, to confess, but instead I swallowed it down. I'd lost the right to act rashly, at least for now. All I could do was breathe and try to survive the storm I had let slip into my life. I spotted them across the crowded living room, Lila leaning against Marco with that laugh I had loved in secret for years. "You're hilarious," she said, and my chest tightened. I gritted my teeth and muttered under my breath, "Why does it hurt so much?" I wanted to storm over, demand she notice me, but I froze, the same way I had frozen every time before. My heart throbbed with anger and helplessness. "I can't believe you did that," Marco said, his voice low but teasing. Lila laughed again, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I clenched my fists at my sides. "Stop it," I whispered to myself, my vision blurring. I wanted to shout, to scream that she had been mine all along, that I had waited silently while she smiled at someone else. But instead, I turned and walked away, my feet moving automatically, carrying me into the hallway. "Hey, are you okay?" someone asked. I ignored the voice. I didn't want anyone to see me like this, broken and exposed. I leaned against a wall, taking deep breaths, trying to force myself into control. "I can't do this anymore," I muttered, staring at a small photo taped to the wall, a picture of Lila and me as kids laughing on the swings. I touched it gently, my fingers tracing her face, memories flooding in, long summer days, whispered secrets, the closeness we had shared. All of it felt stolen now. I made a decision then, sharp and final. "I need space," I said aloud, though no one was near. I can't keep pretending." When Lila approached later, smiling and expecting normal, I turned to her. "I think we should, maybe take a break," I said, keeping my voice steady though it cracked inside. "What do you mean?" she asked, confusion written on her face. I need time," I said quickly, stepping past her. Her eyes searched mine, but I didn't stop. Her expression broke me further, but I forced myself forward. Walking alone, I felt the emptiness grow. Everyone around me was celebrating, laughing, unaware of the storm raging inside me. I wanted to scream, to tell someone, anyone, that my heart was shattering, but I stayed silent. "Why does it always have to be like this?" I whispered, hugging myself tightly. The hallway felt too long, the sounds of the party echoing painfully against my chest. I found a quiet corner, leaning against the wall, staring at that childhood photo again. "You don't even know," I murmured. "You never knew." Tears pricked my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I had made my choice. Pain was mine to bear alone. Marco and Lila had no idea what they had done to me, and I couldn't tell them. I had been too weak before, but not this time. "I'll fix this," I whispered to the empty room, the words sharp, a vow to myself. "I'll take control of my life again. I won't let them, or anyone, hurt me like this." The photo slipped slightly in my hands and I caught it, holding it to my chest. It was a reminder of what I had lost, but also of what I could reclaim. My heart ached, raw and open, but beneath the pain, a quiet fire began to burn. I took a deep breath, letting the anger and sorrow mix into determination. "No more hiding," I said. "No more silence. This ends now." I folded the photo carefully and slipped it into my pocket. The party roared behind me, but I walked away, alone, feeling the first small spark of control returning to my life. I first noticed Alex during history class, sitting alone in the back, his notebook open but his eyes scanning the room like he was searching for something. He caught me staring and gave a small smile. "Hey," he said quietly, tilting his head. "You look like you carry the weight of the world." I blinked, surprised. "Oh, I'm fine," I muttered, looking down at my own desk. He didn't push, just leaned back in his chair. "Sure you are," he said, smirking. "I've met a lot of people who say that, but their faces tell a different story." I didn't know what to say, so I stayed quiet. At lunch, I found him sitting on the steps outside, sketchbook on his lap. "Mind if I sit?" I asked, hesitating. "Not at all," he said, moving his bag so I could sit next to him. We were silent for a moment, just listening to the faint chatter from the cafeteria. You're new here, right? I asked finally. Yeah, he said, flipping his notebook closed. Transferred last week. And you? You look like you've been stuck in some kind of storm. I let out a bitter laugh. You could say that. He tilted his head, curious. Storms can teach you things if you survive them, he said. I'm guessing you're in the middle of one? I shrugged. Something like that, I said, unsure if I wanted to share. He nodded like he understood without needing details. I'm Alex, he said, extending a hand. I shook it reluctantly. I'm just me, I muttered. He chuckled softly. Fair enough. But everyone needs someone to talk to. Even if it's just a little. I found myself opening up slowly, spilling fragments of my sadness. It's complicated, I admitted, staring at my hands. Some things happen and you feel trapped in them even when you want out. He nodded knowingly. I get that, he said. But don't let it define you. Revenge or obsession will eat you alive if you let it. I flinched at the words, realizing he might be speaking to something deeper than I was ready to admit. I don't think anyone can understand, I said quietly. Maybe not yet, he replied, but talking helps. Even a little. We sat in silence for a while, watching clouds drift by, and I noticed how easy it was to feel lighter just sitting there. You seem different today, he said finally. More grounded. I laughed softly, a sound I hadn't made in days. I guess you could say that. Then I saw Lila across the courtyard talking to someone else, her expression distant, almost troubled. My chest tightened. She looks off, I muttered. Alex glanced at her and nodded. People hide more than they show, he said. Sometimes it's not about you. Sometimes it's about what they're fighting inside. I swallowed hard, thinking about how true that sounded. Thanks, I said finally. I don't usually talk like this. He smiled. That's why friends are for, he said simply. To notice the cracks, to listen, and to remind you not to fall into them. I nodded, feeling a strange warmth I hadn't felt in weeks, realizing that maybe having someone who actually sees you could make the storm a little less unbearable. I saw Marco across the hallway, laughing with a group of friends like he owned the place. My stomach twisted. I can't keep letting him get away with this, I muttered under my breath. I knew I had to act, but even thinking about it made my hands shake. What if I make things worse? I whispered, pacing. No. I can't do nothing. Later, I found Alex sitting under the old oak tree near the gym. Hey, I said, dropping onto the bench beside him. I need advice. He looked at me curiously. Sure. What's going on? It's Marco, I said, my voice tight. He's arrogant, manipulative, and he's been walking over everyone, including Lila. I want to expose him, but I don't know how. Alex leaned back, studying me. Exposing him might feel good, but think about the fallout. Revenge can consume you if you're not careful. I rubbed my temples. I know, but if I don't do something, he keeps getting away with it. Alex nodded slowly. I get that. Just be smart. Subtle is better than obvious. You don't want to hurt yourself in the process. I thought about that. Subtle. That could work. Maybe I could show people who he really is, I said quietly. Not out of hate, just truth. Alex smiled faintly. Now that I can support. The next day I started small. During class, I quietly corrected one of Marco's exaggerated stories about his grades in front of the teacher. Wait, I got a B, not an A, he muttered under his breath, glancing at me, eyes narrowing. I shrugged innocently. Guess someone forgot the facts. He gave a fake laugh, but I could see the first flicker of irritation. At lunch, I overheard him boasting about helping Lila with a project she barely needed help with. I leaned in and asked, Really? You spent all night helping her with that? He froze. Yeah, I guess. I smirked. Interesting. Because she said she finished it yesterday. His jaw tightened. You've got jokes, huh? I shrugged. Just making sure facts match stories. Every small correction, every tiny exposure fed a quiet satisfaction in me. But Alex's warning lingered in my mind. Am I going too far? I muttered as I scribbled notes about his lies in my notebook. No, it's just truth. But a knot of doubt stayed in my chest. That afternoon I bumped into Alex again. How's it going? He asked. I sighed. Better, I think. But I keep wondering if I'm crossing a line. He nodded. Lines are tricky. But you can't ignore injustice either. Just don't let anger drive everything. I nodded slowly, trying to balance the fire in my chest with caution. By the end of the day, Marco's composure had begun to crack. I saw him glare at me across the hallway, his usual smirk faltering for a moment. "What's your problem?" he muttered to a friend, though he glanced at me again. I walked by, keeping my expression neutral. Inside, I felt a pulse of satisfaction. "It's working," I whispered. "Just a little more." But I didn't know if he suspected it was me. That uncertainty gnawed at me, sharper than the small victories I had earned. He didn't know who was undermining him, and that made me feel both powerful and vulnerable. I had started down a path I couldn't turn back from yet, and I didn't know what lay at the end. I was walking through the park trying to clear my head when I saw her, Lila, sitting on a bench, shoulders shaking. "Lila?" I said softly, approaching. She looked up, startled, eyes red. "Oh, it's you," she whispered, trying to wipe her tears. I sat beside her, careful not to crowd her. "What's wrong?" I asked. Her voice cracked. "Everything, and nothing." I frowned. "Talk to me. Please." She hesitated, biting her lip. "It's my family," she admitted finally. They expect me to be perfect, to act like nothing ever hurts me. And I'm not. I'm tired of pretending." My chest tightened. "I get that," I said gently. "Family pressure can be suffocating." She nodded but looked away. "And there's Marco," she said, voice barely audible. "I feel guilty. I shouldn't have. I mean, I still care about you." I felt my stomach drop. "You still care about me?" I asked carefully, trying to keep my voice calm. She nodded quickly, tears spilling again. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't know how to handle my feelings. I was scared and I made mistakes. Big ones." I swallowed hard, the old pain clashing with this new revelation. "You're telling me this now?" I asked quietly. "After everything?" Her hands trembled in her lap. "I didn't want you to find out like this." I wanted to explain, but I didn't know how. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to contain the storm inside me. "You didn't think of how it would feel for me," I said. "You didn't care about what I was going through." She flinched. "I did. I care more than you know. I was confused, and I didn't want to ruin what we had as friends." I closed my eyes for a moment. "Friends? Yeah, friends. That's all we were." She reached for my hand hesitantly. "I never stopped thinking about you," she whispered. "Even when I was with him. Even when I laughed with him, part of me was missing you." I pulled back slightly, conflicted. "You're telling me this now, but it doesn't change what happened. It doesn't change the nights I spent thinking I'd lost you forever." Her eyes filled with regret. "I know. And I'm so sorry. I wish I could take it back." I stared at her, searching for the words to explain the mix of anger and compassion inside me. "Why didn't you tell me before?" I asked. "Why let me hurt like this?" She shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. "I was scared. I thought you'd hate me. I thought I'd lose you entirely." I exhaled sharply, torn between forgiveness and resentment. "You already almost lost me," I said. "Maybe you did. I still might." We sat in silence for a few moments, letting the weight of unspoken words fill the air. "I don't know if I can forgive you right now," I admitted, my voice soft. "But I want to understand." She nodded slowly, relief washing over her face. "I just needed you to know," she said. "I needed someone to see me, to understand the mess I've been in." I leaned back, looking at the empty swings swaying in the breeze. "You're a mess," I said, half teasing, half serious. "But maybe we're both a little broken." She smiled weakly, wiping her tears. "Yeah," she said. "Maybe we are." I sat at my desk, staring at the pile of textbooks and muttered, "No more waiting. No more hiding." Alex leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "Decided to finally do something, huh?" he asked. I glanced up, determination in my eyes. "Yeah, not revenge. Just reclaiming control over my life. I've been letting Marco dictate too much." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Careful. The line between control and obsession is thinner than you think." I nodded. "I know. I'll stay on the right side. I think." The next day, I approached my teachers, asking for extra assignments, volunteering in ways I'd always avoided. "You're really pushing yourself," Alex said during lunch. "It's like you're different." I shrugged. "I've been letting life slip past me. No more." He smiled faintly. "Just don't let this turn into a battle with him. Focus on you, not him." I took a deep breath. "I know. But he's arrogant. He underestimates people, and that's useful." In class, Marco smirked at me from across the room. "What's the plan today, genius?" he whispered as I passed. I gave a small, polite smile. Just making sure things are fair, I replied. His eyes narrowed, but I walked away, keeping calm. Later, I overheard him bragging about taking credit for a group project. I quietly handed the teacher my notes showing contributions, careful not to make it obvious. Interesting, I whispered to myself. Subtle but effective. After school, I met Alex under the oak tree again. You're really pushing him, huh? He asked, noticing the spark in my eyes. I am. But carefully, I replied. I can't let him win by default. Not anymore. He frowned. Just remember, pride can blind you. Don't lose yourself in this game. I nodded, the caution sinking in. I'll watch myself. But it feels good, like I'm finally standing up. Lila noticed my shift too. You're different lately, she said one afternoon. More confident, less stressed. I smiled faintly, trying to focus on what matters, on what I can control. She tilted her head, curiosity in her eyes. And Marco? I paused, careful not to reveal too much. He's learning some lessons. Slowly. Her lips twitched, half smile, but she didn't press further. I could tell she noticed my change, that my independence was both frustrating and intriguing her. During the week, I kept up the balance. I studied harder, joined a small study group, helped classmates without seeking praise, and dropped little truths in conversations that undermined Marco's inflated reputation. Each time I caught his reaction, a small thrill ran through me. It's working, I whispered. Just a little more and he'll stumble. But with each move, a nagging voice reminded me of Alex's warning. Don't cross the line. I paused one evening, staring at my reflection in the mirror. Am I doing this for me, or for him? I asked myself quietly. Pride, fear, hope, they all tangled inside me. I wanted justice, but I didn't want to become someone I'd regret. By Friday, Marco was visibly tense. I caught him glaring at me in the hallway, muttering under his breath. I walked past, expression neutral, heart racing. He doesn't know it's me yet, I thought. But he will notice soon. And when he does, I'll be ready. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and apprehension, knowing the plan was unfolding exactly as I intended, but also that the path ahead required careful balance. I caught Marco alone in the empty classroom, his back to the window, fiddling with his phone. We need to talk, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. He turned, smirking like he already knew I was coming. About what? He asked casually, though I could see the flicker of curiosity in his eyes. About you lying, I said, taking a step closer. About using Lila. About everything you've done while pretending to be charming. His smirk didn't falter. Oh, this is about her? He asked. You mean the girl you love? I felt my chest tighten. Don't play games, Marco. I know you manipulated her. You knew she still cared about me and you used it to make yourself look better, to climb higher. He laughed softly, leaning against the desk. You're overreacting. I just helped her, that's all. I shook my head, fury building. Helped her? You used her. Every compliment, every gesture, calculated. You knew she had feelings for me and twisted it to your advantage. He raised his hands mockingly. And if I did? You're making this sound like a crime. I stepped closer, voice low and dangerous. It is a crime against trust, Marco. Against everything human decency stands for. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Every word I had held in for weeks wanted to explode. Why? I demanded. Why her? Why do you have to take something real and ruin it for your ego? He shrugged, that irritating calmness still intact. Because people fall for me, he said smoothly. Because I saw an opportunity and I took it. Everyone does what benefits them. You should try it sometime. I swallowed hard, rage and disbelief warping together. I can't believe you, I muttered. I thought you were just arrogant, but this is cruel. His smirk widened. You can't prove anything. And even if you did, what would you do? Run crying to Lila? She'd never believe it completely. You just make yourself look pathetic. My fists clenched. Maybe. Or maybe I finally expose you for who you really are. As if on cue, I heard footsteps outside the door. Lila. My stomach sank. She pushed the door slightly open, peeking in. What's going on? She asked quietly. Marco glanced at her, unfazed. Just talking, he said, voice calm. Nothing you need to worry about. I turned to her, my chest heavy. She needs to know, I said under my breath. Lila's eyes widened as she listened, piecing it together from our tense exchange. I could see the confusion and hurt crossing her face. Marco noticed her realization and smirked, leaning back. See? I told you she'd never fully understand. You can't stop me. You're too weak. I felt a surge of anger but also a weight pressing down on me. Expose him publicly and risk Lila's trust, or handle it quietly and plan my next move. My mind raced. You're not going to get away with this forever, I said through gritted teeth. This ends soon. He laughed, a low mocking sound. Sure. Keep dreaming. You think a little meddling will ruin me? You don't have what it takes. My jaw tightened. He thought he was untouchable. He didn't know that every lie, every manipulation, was being quietly recorded in my mind, every action catalogued, every weakness noted. Lila shifted, uncertain, but I saw the flicker of trust in her eyes. I had to decide fast, and the weight of responsibility pressed on me like never before. Marco's confidence made my hands tremble, but my resolve hardened. I had a choice, strike now or wait for the perfect moment. And I knew deep down the moment was coming. I waited until lunch, watching Marco swagger through the cafeteria, pretending everything was perfect. I leaned toward Alex, whispering, "Watch this." He raised an eyebrow. "You're sure about this?" I nodded. "It has to be subtle. No direct attacks. Just facts." I caught Marco laughing at someone, completely unaware of what was coming. "Here goes nothing," I muttered. I approached a group of classmates, casually dropping a comment about last week's project. "Funny, Marco said he did all the work himself," I said, voice loud enough for a few nearby to hear. One of them laughed nervously. "Wait, really? I thought we all contributed." Another added, "Yeah, I helped him a lot, actually." I shrugged innocently. I guess some people forget the truth when it's convenient. I saw Marco's eyes flick toward me, his smile faltering just slightly. Later during break I approached a small cluster of friends. "Did anyone else notice Marco exaggerating his grades?" I asked lightly. A few nodded, whispering among themselves. "He's always showing off," someone said. I saw him taking credit for our assignments again. I let the information sink in, watching reactions carefully. Marco was standing nearby, pretending to joke with his friends, but his tension was growing. He glanced at me, a flicker of panic in his eyes, but quickly masked it. I caught Lila looking at me from across the room. Her lips were pressed together, her eyes wide. She didn't approach immediately, but I could feel her noticing the shift in my presence, the quiet way I controlled the narrative. I walked past her, giving a nod. She smiled faintly, hesitant but admiring, and I felt a small warmth amidst the satisfaction. "She sees it," I whispered under my breath. By the afternoon, whispers about Marco's behavior spread, and I felt the subtle power of karma unfolding. He confronted me near the lockers. "What are you doing?" he hissed, voice low, controlled. I kept my expression neutral. "Nothing. Just letting the truth speak for itself." His jaw tightened. "You think this will ruin me?" I met his gaze evenly. "I think it'll just show people who you really are." Alex appeared at my side. "Pushing him hard, huh?" he said quietly. I nodded, but carefully. "Every step is calculated." He gave me a look that mixed concern and approval. "Just don't let pride blind you." I sighed. "I'm aware. But I also won't let him walk over everyone again." During class, a few classmates subtly called out examples of Marco's exaggerations, crediting our team. I smiled faintly, feeling the satisfaction of the plan unfolding. Marco's usual arrogance was cracking, replaced by a tight-lipped tension. He tried to regain control, but every attempt only revealed more cracks. I could see the desperation building in him, the pride unraveling quietly under my careful orchestration. By the end of the day, I leaned against the wall outside the classroom, exhaling. Marco's friends whispered among themselves, questioning his actions. Lila approached hesitantly. You really did that?" she asked softly. "Yes," I admitted. "But it wasn't out of revenge. I just wanted to show the truth. People need to see reality sometimes." She nodded slowly, eyes thoughtful. "It's impressive how you handled it." I smiled faintly, a mix of pride and lingering hurt pressing inside me. "Thanks," I said. "But the real lesson is learning to control what we can, and letting the rest fall where it may." I watched Marco walk by, silent and humiliated, and felt the first real surge of empowerment since all of this began. It wasn't just about him, it was about me finally taking charge of my life. I spotted Lila sitting on the old bench near the swings, the same place where we used to spend hours as kids. She looked up when I approached. "Hey," she said softly, her voice hesitant. "Hey," I replied, keeping my tone neutral, though my chest tightened. She shifted, clutching a small stuffed bear we'd once shared as children. I wanted to say I'm sorry," she said, eyes downcast. For everything. For Marco for not telling you sooner, I held up a hand. It's okay, I said, though the words felt heavy. It's not just okay. I've carried this weight too. She glanced up at me, confusion mixing with guilt. You understand? She asked quietly. I nodded slowly. I understand more than you think. But it's not something you just erase. I've changed because of it. She sighed, hugging the bear closer. I know. I see it. You're different now. Stronger. I gave a small, wry smile. Different, yeah. Stronger, maybe. But some scars don't fade. They just shift. Remind you what matters. She hesitated, then reached into her pocket, pulling out a small, folded note. I found this while cleaning my desk, she said. It's from when we were 12. You gave it to me. I took it gently, unfolding the paper. Promise we'll always be honest with each other. My throat tightened. We promised, I whispered. But we never really kept it, did we? She shook her head. No, and I regret that. I looked away for a moment, memories rushing back. The park, the lake, our laughter echoing through long summer days. I guess betrayal and heartbreak, they shape us, I said quietly. They teach us what we can survive, what we can forgive, and what we have to let go of. She nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. I don't want to hurt you again, she said. But I can't erase how I feel either. I exhaled, staring at the swings swaying gently in the breeze. Feelings are complicated, I admitted. Love, regret, jealousy, all tangled together. I'm still figuring out how to deal with them without losing myself again. She reached out tentatively, brushing my hand. Maybe we can start over, she whispered. I hesitated, the familiar ache in my chest reminding me of old wounds. Maybe, I said finally. But carefully, slowly. We can't ignore the past, but we can decide how it shapes us moving forward. She smiled faintly, relief mingling with caution. I'd like that, she said. I want to be honest, truly honest this time. I nodded, a small warmth spreading in my chest despite the lingering tension. Me too. It won't be easy and it won't be perfect. But we can try. I glanced at the bear in her arms, then back at her. Some things stay with you, I said softly. Some memories, some promises, and maybe some feelings. She smiled, a hint of nostalgia in her eyes. And maybe that's okay, she whispered. I nodded, letting the note fall gently into my palm. Yeah, I said. Maybe it is. For the first time in months, I felt a quiet sense of balance. A fragile, hopeful start, even with the past still tugging at our heart. I met Alex at our usual spot under the oak tree, backpack slung over one shoulder. Hey, he said, grinning. Still plotting or finally enjoying life? I chuckled softly. Trying to enjoy life. Feels weird, but good. He laughed. Weird is the first step to better. You've changed, you know. More grounded. I shrugged, hiding the pride that tried to swell. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just learning to handle things without exploding. We walked through the park, kicking at fallen leaves. So, no more Marco missions? He asked teasingly. I shook my head. No more. That chapter's over. I realized I can't let anger define me. I need to grow, not just win. He nodded thoughtfully. Good. That's maturity. You're becoming the person you wanted to be. I smiled faintly. Feels like a long road, but worth it. Later I ran into Lila near the swings. She was quietly sketching in her notebook. Hey, I said softly. She looked up, smiling but hesitant. Hey, you're here early? I shrugged. Thought I'd enjoy the quiet before school starts. She tilted her head. I like it when you come by. It feels normal. I felt a small warmth at her words. Me too, I said. We sat side by side, the silence comfortable, filled with memories of simpler times. You're different now, she said finally. Not just how you act, but how you handle things. I looked at her, unsure if I should answer. I've learned a lot, I said carefully. About anger, about trust, about myself. She nodded slowly as if understanding without judgment. I'm glad, she whispered. Really glad. We talked in fragments, school, books, little jokes. But the undercurrent was always there. Unspoken feelings, careful boundaries, trust being rebuilt. Sometimes I wonder, I said quietly, if we could have done things differently back then. She paused, tracing a line in her notebook. Maybe, but we can't change the past. We can only decide how to live now. I smiled faintly. Yeah, that makes sense. After school, I met Alex and a few classmates at the library for a study session. You've got a real group now, he said, nudging me. I nodded. It feels good. Different from before. I feel supported, not alone. We laughed over shared frustrations about a tricky assignment, and I realized how much I had missed this genuine connection, not tied to schemes or regrets. Later, walking home alone, I held the small note from Lila in my hand. Memories stirred, but instead of pain, I felt calm. We're learning, I whispered to myself. Slowly. Carefully. The swings swayed in the distance, a reminder of the past but also a symbol of continuity. I knew heartbreak might still lurk, but resilience was stronger now. I passed Lila's house, seeing her wave through the window. I waved back, smiling, feeling hope tinged with caution. One step at a time, I thought, letting the night air fill me with quiet resolve. One step, and maybe, slowly, we can both move forward. I saw Marco sitting alone on the bench by the sports field, his usual confidence stripped away. No friends, no smirk, just silence. I walked past slowly, letting him notice me. He looked up, eyes sharp but hollow. I didn't expect to see you here, he muttered. I shrugged. Life moves on, Marco. So do consequences. He didn't respond, staring at the ground. I didn't need to say more. Karma had already done its work, and I felt a quiet satisfaction, tempered by the memory of everything I had endured. Later, Lila and I met under the stars near the old park, the place where we had spent so many hours as kids. It's beautiful tonight, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, looking up at the sky. Yeah, I agreed. Feels like a good place for closure. She glanced at me, uncertainty and warmth in her eyes. Closure? She asked. I mean, for everything we went through. I let out a small breath. Everything. For the heartbreak, the misunderstandings, the fights, even the quiet moments we never said out loud. She smiled faintly, her hand brushing against mine for a brief second. I guess some things never change, she said, eyes glistening. Even now we can just sit quietly together and feel it all. I returned the smile, feeling the mixture of pain, nostalgia, and gratitude wash over me. Yeah, I said softly. Silent closure can be enough sometimes. We didn't speak much after that, letting the night air carry our thoughts. The past felt present in a gentle way, not sharp, not bitter, but alive. I thought about all the lessons learned, the strength I had built, and the small victories I had won over fear, doubt, and betrayal. Funny, I murmured, how someone you love can hurt you so deeply, but also teach you who you really are. She nodded slowly, looking at the stars. And how first love never really leaves you even when it changes form, she whispered. I reached into my pocket, feeling the note she had given me months ago, the childhood photo tucked inside. I held it for a moment before letting it rest gently on the bench between us. For memories, I said quietly. She smiled, eyes soft. For growth, she replied. That simple exchange carried all the words we couldn't say, all the confessions we had held back, and all the forgiveness we had quietly given each other. As we stood to leave, I felt a small sting in my chest, but also a strange lightness. Take care, Lila, I said finally. She nodded. You too, she replied, voice steady yet tender. I watched her walk away, feeling the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I turned back to the empty park, the swings swaying gently in the night breeze. The past was behind me, but its lessons were alive in me, shaping the way I would move forward. Stronger, wiser, and quietly grateful for love that had both broken and built me. Here's to what's next, I whispered, letting the stars witness my silent promise to myself.